Hey guys, welcome back to Sinnoh. This is the series where I'm building the entire Pokemon region in Cities Skylines 2. We already completed 4 major settlements, with Oreburgh City being the latest, and now we're moving on to the next chapter, Floaroma Town. As usual, we'll start by laying down the roads and shaping the surroundings of Floaroma Town. Then we'll begin the initial layout, using buildings primarily from the UK pack to give the town a unique and charming character. Next, we'll focus on what makes Floaroma truly special, its vast flower fields. We'll put in extensive work to create a vibrant, flourishing landscape, transforming this town into the flower capital of Sinnoh. And finally, we'll wrap up with detailing, adding those final touches that make the town feel truly alive, both for its residents and many tourists I imagine would visit this scenic place. And now, without further ado, let's make Floaroma Town bloom and bring its fields to life. I'm starting by expanding Floaroma Town space, as I initially felt the layout was a bit too small. To achieve this, I adjusted the river's flow, stretching it slightly further north, which didn't disrupt the overall map, but provided more room for development. And next I worked on elevating the town, since according to its lore it sits on a gentle hill. While not the tallest elevation, I wanted to create a hilly landscape that would enhance the town's atmosphere. This will also play a key role in shaping the flower fields later on, as the varying elevation would add depth and more visually appealing look to the vibrant flower formations. Once the town's elevation was set, I moved on to laying out the road network. Initially, I considered running the highway straight through Floaroma Town somehow, possibly hiding it in a tunnel, but I ultimately decided on a more natural approach, redirecting the highway to curve around the hill and the town itself. This not only keeps the road slightly hidden beneath the landscape, but also preserves the town's tranquility by preventing heavy traffic from passing too close to its residents. And one key decision I'm still debating is whether to designate this whole road or highway as Road 204 or Road 205, which, since there is a bridge that crosses the river later on, I decided that Road 204 will end before the bridge and Road 205 will begin on the other side of the bridge. However, another branch of Road 205 will follow the riverbank towards Valley Windworks, keeping it somewhat consistent with the game's layout. And beyond its local role, this highway will serve as a major northern road. While the Pokemon games rely on Mountain Coronet's caves to connect different parts of Sinnoh, this approach wouldn't work well for a city building game, and a fully tunnel-based network would lead to a heavy traffic congestion and technical challenges with elevation. And I thought instead I'm extending this highway all the way to Sinnoh Point City at some point, ensuring a smooth regional connection. An off-ramp will also lead to Eterna City, making it a well-integrated transport corridor. And next I refined how the major intersection that connects the highways leading from Jubilife City to the northern regions. This is actually the third iteration of this junction, and I think this final design works well. It basically connects the main highway north towards Eterna City and Sinnoh Point City, a secondary road leading to Valley Windworks, the River Dam and Oreburgh City, and a local off-ramp providing direct access to Floaroma Town. I kept the intersection design simple, ensuring smooth traffic flow without overcomplicating it, and in the end I think it blends well into outskirts of Floaroma Town and sets a good foundation for the next development phases. I also worked on the rail infrastructure, which was more straightforward. The rail line takes a different road north. Eventually it will be passing through Eterna City before continuing further, probably to Sinnoh Point City itself. And in Floaroma Town there will be a small train stop designed to reflect purely rural character of the area. Instead of a large station building, this stop will be more like those you'll find in the small countryside towns. A simple platform with minimal infrastructure, blending seamlessly into the natural surroundings. After completing the rail and highway infrastructure, I moved on to designing a simple and functional road layout for Floaroma Town. I didn't want an overly complex street network, just a few intersecting roads forming a central point around the train station, with some roads extending towards the shorelines. And the layout had to be gritty yet organic, subtly shaped by the flower fields that would later define the town's unique character. For the flower fields themselves, I started by laying down square-shaped roads, knowing that they would eventually be overlaid with dirt paths to achieve a more natural feel. This initial structure helped establish a planned layout, ensuring that the stretched flower fields would look organized while maintaining their rustic charm. Back in Jubilife City episode, I had originally built a trumpet intersection, but while working on the initial road layout for Floaroma Town, I decided to remove it. However, to bring back that intersection, I relocated it to the western part of Floaroma Town, where it made much more sense. Positioned there, the intersection connects seamlessly to the highway network on the west side, providing a more convenient route for travelers heading north toward Eternity City and Snow Point City without needing to pass directly through this other intersection leading to Jubilife. I've come to really appreciate simple intersection designs. They just work well in areas like this. I made quite a few adjustments to the elevation and layout, fine-tuning the structure to make everything look more natural and organized. In the end, though, the simplicity of these intersections felt right for Floaroma Town. They help maintain the rural charm of the area while still integrating the highways mostly into the landscape. Overall, I was really happy with how the initial road layout turned out. It gave a strong foundation for the town while keeping things true to its original feel. Now it's a time to move on to the next phase, placing the first buildings and shaping the town's identity. Before moving on, if you are enjoying the content so far, please consider leaving a like and subscribing to the channel. Your support is what keeps this Sinnoh Project going, and it really means a lot to me. Knowing that you guys are on board with this journey helps me stay motivated to bring this entire region to life. Thank you all for your support, and now let's move on to the next part where I'm starting to place the first buildings in Floaroma Town. For the initial design of Floaroma Town, I didn't want to keep it as small as it appears in the game, where it consists of just a few buildings, a flower shop, a Poké Center and Pokémart. That would have significantly downplayed its potential given its location and the presence of vast flower fields, which I imagine could support thriving businesses and even attract tourists from across Sinnoh. So while Floaroma Town remains relatively small in size, I wanted it to feel more lively and functional. The buildings I chose, mainly from the British pack, helped to achieve this, I think. Given its proximity to Jubilife City, I also imagined that over time it could become a more integrated with larger metropolis, much like how growing cities absorb nearby rural towns in real life. I settled on using the British pack after experimenting with my first block layout and seeing how well it fit the atmosphere. When I thought of Floaroma Town, my first inspiration was the famous Dutch tulip fields, but I also looked into Hokkaido, which was a major influence on Sinnoh's design. In fact, Floaroma Town was probably inspired by Furano, a rural town in Hokkaido known for its vast flower fields and status as a popular tourist destination. And while I considered following a Japanese theme for this build, I ultimately wanted to experiment with the UK pack and create a distinct European style village. The small brick houses in the pack, while different from the Dutch architecture, still gave me a similar cozy rural vibe reminiscent of some areas in the Netherlands. After placing the first set of buildings and shaping the town, I was really pleased with how it turned out, and the layout felt natural, and I decided to expand the rest of the town in a similar manner. After establishing the town's basic layout, I experimented with placing some European-style hotels near the train station, creating a small tourist hub. Some of these buildings will later be converted into the restaurants and flower shops once I get to the detailing phase, but for now they already add a lot of charm to the area. Their aesthetic fits well with the town's character and makes the entrance to Floaroma feel a bit more welcoming to visitors. One important building I wanted to include but hadn't initially thought much about it was the contest hall. While researching Sinnoh's lore, I revisited the anime and realized just how significant Pokemon contests were in the Sinnoh region. Floaroma Town is home to one of these contest halls, and since contests are a major part of the series' storyline, I felt it was necessary to include it in the build. There are also contest halls in Jubilife City and other towns throughout Sinnoh, so I will probably add those in future episodes, perhaps as part of the Sinnoh Extras series. After placing the contest hall, which I'll detail a bit later as well, I turned my attention to designing a proper town square, a central space where people could gather, relax, and enjoy the town's atmosphere. Naturally, I wanted this square to be surrounded by flowers and greenery, making it feel like the heart of Floaroma, and this will help balance the town's layout, ensuring that not all of its activity is concentrated around the railway station, and a dedicated town square feels like a necessary addition, reinforcing Floaroma's identity as a peaceful and charming village. While this is just the first design iteration of how I approached the square, I already liked how it was shaping up. It naturally fit into the town's atmosphere, reinforcing Floaroma's small town charm and giving the core of the settlement a more defined sense of place. At some point, I also started experimenting with new decals that I got from a Discord server, something I hadn't done before, but for Floaroma Town I felt it was necessary to find wine and moss decals that would complement the town's atmosphere. Without them, it felt like some buildings and walls were missing a finalizing touch. These specific decals were created by Generic Lemons, a really talented Cities Skylines 2 creator. Surprisingly, they haven't been published on Paradox Mods yet, but I was able to access them through the server. I don't actually usually download assets this way, mostly for security reasons, but since I trust Generic Lemons, I decided to make an exception this time. And honestly, huge shout out to him, these decals look amazing, and you'll see me using them throughout the town, and they really helped to complete the look in certain areas. I was really happy with how they turned out. And now I invite you to sit back and enjoy as I lay out the rest of the town. While some areas will be refined and expanded as we go, once the major buildings were in place, the town really started to take shape. At this stage, Floaroma Town got its first real look, and I was quite happy with how it all turned out. While building Floaroma Town, I had some errors especially near the seashore, that I didn't want to leave blank or simply cover with trees and fields. Since this area lies close to the sea, I decided to transform it into a functional seashore where people could engage in various activities, making it feel more realistic. Given Jubilife City's proximity, it made sense that people wouldn't just visit the sandy shores of Sanjam Town, but would also explore the northern coastline. And Floaroma Town is a known tourist attraction, and since it isn't that far from Jubilife City, I imagined that the shoreline nearby would also see some activities, so I designed a small beach area to add vibrancy to the town, incorporating a few hotels and light infrastructure for visitors to enjoy. Nothing excessive, just enough to enhance the experience. I also considered how people, both Floaromians and Sinnohians, would travel throughout the area, whether on foot or by bike. In some parts they would naturally follow paths along the car roads, but in certain places I wanted to create purely pedestrian infrastructure. So one such spot is a bridge leading north from Floaroma Town, crossing the river and continuing towards Eternal Forest, which will eventually form a scenic trail on its own. And this bridge was essential for improving connectivity, allowing people to move throughout the area more easily. To make it more interesting, I designed a circular turbine-shaped descent from the bridge, creating a gradual transition instead of steep incline. This way, pedestrians and cyclists can comfortably navigate the elevation without a sudden climb. Overall, this is a foundational step for future development in the area, setting the stage for what's to come in the next episodes. I also established a bus line to complement the train connection between Floaroma Town and Jubilife City, as the two aren't too far apart. And this bus route turned out to be quite popular, which was a nice surprise. After my experience in Orburg City, where the bus line wasn't used much, I eventually removed it. It was great to see how people actually started using the buses over here, and many passengers traveled into the northern part of Jubilife City, making the road feel like a valuable addition to the transportation network, and overall I was quite happy with how it turned out. Once the connectivity was more established, I returned to the area where I had been developing a tourist-oriented shoreline hub, and I placed some nice houses, mostly guest houses or small hotels, along with the one large hotel from Eastern European pack to give the area a distinct character. And I also considered that some tourists traveling across Sinnoh might do so in trailers. While there is currently only one trailer-style car model available, I still decided to create a small trailer park and camping site. This would provide a spot for both locals and visiting travelers to stay while enjoying the coastal scenery of northern Sinnoh. Conveniently, the campsite is located right next to the hotel, meaning visitors wouldn't have to worry too much about food supplies, since they could always dine at the hotel's restaurant if needed. At this point, I wanted to experiment a bit, first with the new Terrain Surfaces pack, a new surface pack that introduced various textures designed to blend seamlessly with each other, including grass, ground, rock, and most excitingly, flowers as well. This was a great addition and something I really wanted to try out. These textures allow for more realistic layering over the default terrain, breaking up the somewhat plain grass currently in the game and adding more natural variation to the landscape. I was particularly curious to see how the flowers would look alongside assets I had previously used from other packs, like the farming decal pack and the in-game flowers as well. And this area was sort of a test run before committing to fully covering the area in flower fields around Floaroma Town. I also remembered that Floaroma Meadow from the original game, located just north of Floaroma Town, and that area there's a small house with honey trees nearby, something I wanted to replicate as a tribute. To capture the look, I placed 3 props and adjusted their color to a slightly more yellow shade, similar to how they appear in the game. This was really a cool addition that I ended up using throughout all of Floaroma Town, both in the fields and within town itself. Normally you can't recolor trees, but if you place them as props, you can get recolorable versions. And there is a mod that makes it possible, and thanks to it I was able to bring more vibrant colors into Floaroma. The vanilla flowers in the game aren't as bright as I wanted, so this mod was a great way to enhance the look of the flower fields. And you'll see me experimenting with different colors in that section, which wouldn't have been possible without this mod. Before moving on to the fields, I wanted to enhance certain parts of the town itself, apart from just placing the buildings. And first I revisited the central square that I had worked on earlier and made some additions, mainly transforming it into a small farmer's market. I also added more flowers and played around with different assets to mix things up and make the area feel more vibrant. Since this is a town square, I imagined it would naturally be surrounded by nice restaurants and cafes, so I started filling in the surrounding blocks to create a more lively and inviting atmosphere. I also worked on smaller details like road markings and, as usual, enhanced the biking infrastructure, preparing for potential bike lanes in the future. I also added this Pokemon Battleground to fill in the empty spot in the elementary school from the UK pack, and right next to it I placed a water tower from Eastern European pack. Its brick texture complemented the nearby buildings well, so to make it stand out even more in the town's skyline, I added mossy wine decals, which I had used previously to enhance other structures. Overall, the town was really starting to take shape, and the surroundings were looking great as well. However, there was one key thing missing: the flower fields, which would really bring everything together and finalize the overall look. So now let's dive into laying down the Floaroma flower fields. Now we're getting into the part where Floaroma Town will finally take its full shape, and that wouldn't be complete without its iconic surrounding flower fields. When thinking about Floaroma flower fields, it was a no-brainer to draw inspiration from real-world flower fields, which are often more seasonal than what I'm creating here. While these fields in Floaroma will remain in bloom year-round, similar flower growing regions exist in places like Holland, Provence, and even Hokkaido. Floaroma Town fits right in with these locations, and beyond being a thriving business, since flowers are always in demand, it would naturally attract tourists as well. People would likely be fascinated by the colorful, picturesque landscapes, making it both an economic and cultural landmark. For inspiration, I primarily looked at the Furano flower fields in Hokkaido, and I kept the reference photos next to me while laying out the fields, trying to carve the terrain in a similar way using the available assets. To add extra color, I used the prop versions of the flowers, which are recolorable, and initially I didn't realize that I could recolor them in bulk using a paint mode, so I was doing it one by one, and luckily I discovered the faster method later in the build, which sped up the process significantly. I also used a small trick to avoid completely covering the ground with flowers, since that would be heavy on performance. Instead, sometimes I mixed in red and bluish farm decals from the farming decal pack, which added color to the surface. From the top-down view, this blended well with the actual flowers, making the fields look richer while keeping rendering demands lower. At first, I was skeptical about how the area would turn out. The initial flower assets in-game appeared somewhat dim, and their level of detail wasn't great when viewed from the distance, but once the entire area was completed, from above the ground and ground level itself, I was quite happy with the final result. According to the legend, Floaroma Town wasn't always the vibrant place it is today. Long ago, it was a barren hill where nothing would grow, and the settlers struggled to cultivate the land. Desperate, they began praying to Shaman, the mythical Pokemon of nature and gratitude, hoping for a miracle. One day, a gentle breeze carried glowing spores through the air, and soon after, flowers began to bloom everywhere, transforming the once lifeless land into a flourishing paradise. Since then, Floaroma has been known for its endless fields of flowers, believed to be lasting gift from Shaman. I think this kind of story really tells us how Floaroma Town came to be, and it's always interesting to learn about its history. Discovering and understanding these kinds of details adds more depth to the town and makes the build feel more meaningful. Once I got the hang of working with the flowers and figured out the best techniques to make the fields look more vibrant, I started placing them down, gradually transforming the entire area into the flourishing landscape it is now. So now I invite you to sit back and watch as these flower fields come to life in full bloom. Once all the flowers were planted, it was amazing to see how the area transformed, from something fairly plain into a vibrant carpet full of colorful blossoms. It turned out just how I imagined, and seeing it come to life was really satisfying. At this point, there weren't many major tasks left for Floaroma Town, and the focus shifted to detailing, adding small enhancements here and there to refine the buildings, streets, and overall look of the town. And with that, the build was nearly complete. Now I invite you to the final part of this video, where all these details come together to complete the build. For the final details, I started by renaming the streets with a more flower-themed approach. Interestingly, one street was already named Daffodil Street, so I decided to follow that theme and rename the rest accordingly. Most of my detailing focused on enhancing key areas. First, I added tiling in the town center to give it more character. I also wanted to indicate the location of the flower shop from the original game, which I placed in the heart of Floaroma Town. To represent it, I used sellable flower assets as I thought that I found in the game, arranging them to give impression of an actual shop. Beyond that, I worked on reinforcing the town's atmosphere, adding more cafes, restaurants, and decorative elements to highlight Floaroma's charming and lively feel. Along the way, I also placed additional flowers near houses and other areas to bring even more vibrancy to the final look. In the end, these small details really helped to elevate the town, making it feel more complete and immersive. One of the touches I also wanted to add was Floaroma Town welcome sign, which I also plan to standardize across whole Sinnoh region. Just like cities and towns around the world have uniform entry signs, I wanted each town in Sinnoh to have a consistent look, and I designed it with a bluish background inspired by the Sinnoh flag colors, and placed a white sign with 2 small stars featuring text "Welcome to Floaroma Town", along with its motto vivid and scented from the games. I think this small touch really helps to give the town a sense of identity, and in the future I'll be placing similar signs in other cities, along with additional details like road signs, which I might cover in Sinnoh Extras episode. And finally, it felt like the contest venue, as seen in the anime series, needed a bit more space for its contests, so I expanded the contest hall area by adding a prop version of the same building on top of the existing one to mirror it from another side, and decided to work on a parking area to make it look more structured and detailed. And with that, we are wrapping up this episode, adding the final touches and bringing Floaroma Town to life as cozy and vibrant place. Before we finish, I wanted to share something exciting. I'm finally launching Patreon. This has been on my mind for a while, and I see it as a big step forward in helping the Sinnoh Project grow, while also exploring the possibility of making YouTube content full-time. And if you'd like to support the project beyond YouTube, Patreon is a great way to do so, and I've put together some perks to give back to those who might want to join. As a Patreon member, you'll get access to high-resolution images of my builds, early access to the episodes, and a special shoutout in full episodes, of course. I also want to make it a more interactive, so supporters will have a say in decision-making polls and even get a dedicated house in Sinnoh. And for those who want to go even further, the highest tier will include access to save files, exclusive custom merch after 6 months of support, and even a dedicated mention in Sinnoh for the most loyal backers. And I see it as a way to build a stronger community around the project, and I would love to hear feedback from supporters to shape how this platform evolves. And that said, simply watching, liking, and subscribing is already a huge help, and I'm beyond grateful for all the support you guys have given me so far. This project is truly something special, and I can't wait to keep expanding Sinnoh and beyond with all of you. So if you'd like to be a part of the journey in even bigger way, feel free to check out Patreon. And if not, no worries, just leaving a like and subscribing already goes a long way. And on that note, thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next episode.